Well, the pandemic is largely behind us, so we can say that, though there is a lot of places around the world where they are still struggling and fighting against it. But we also have an ongoing war in Ukraine and the subsequent energy crisis, right? There's an economic recession, inflation, and there are geopolitical tensions deeply impacting people across the globe and businesses around also, and therefore also affecting global logistics, supply chains, and shipping, right? However, amid these challenges, we cannot forget the urgency of the global climate crisis, if you want, right? So global logistics of freight transportation, wherever you want to call it, right, represent approximately 7% of global carbon emissions. So there is a pressing need for all of us, to actually decarbonize quickly, um, scaling the market for clean or green fuels and electricity to reduce emissions from transportation on ocean, on air, land is key. Scaling up the infrastructure is necessary to actually facilitate the energy transition, and also scaling investments in port electrification to reduce harmful emission impacting fence line community is key. So that's mainly what my sector actually need to focus on this year. At Maersk, we recognize that we are part of the problem, because we, in our global operations of ships, trucks, airplanes, trains, warehouses, and ports, we burn lots of fossil fuels and emit millions of tons of CO2 every year. But we also strongly believe that we can be, and we are part of the solution, because just to give you an example, alone in the more than 700 ships that we operate globally, we burn fuel equivalent to 1 day of the world production of oil. So we are placed to help drive the solutions for decarbonizing logistics. We see climate transition as both the risk and an opportunity, right? At risk because authorities are likely to drive regulation and tax on fossil fuels in the coming decade. The risk of doing nothing, of being left behind, is not one that we are going to run. And on the other hand, this is also an opportunity for us to help solve our customers' challenge to decarbonize their global supply chains, and to make decarbonization a part of our value proposition as a company in Maersk, right? So the opportunity is to have decarbonized products, and ultimately end-to-end solutions on our shelves. To realize this opportunity will also require access to green fuels in the coming decade, and playing an active role in that transition is also part of of of, of our current journey in Maersk. Yeah. We must do it, right, because there is an urgent need to decarbonize across hard to abate sectors, and shipping is definitely one of them, right? And it's not to sound arrogant, but everything that it has to do with the technology on board the vessel is something that we have been doing for more than 100 years. So it's not a big deal for us. The main challenge in here is just to get as much as green fuel needed for our sector, right? And across different modes of transport. We, as a company, we have over 100,000 customers across the globe, and that we operate in more than 130 countries, right? So what we plan is leveraging our scale to decarbonize global logistics and support competition, our competitors, to do exactly the same, right? It's not an easy task, but it's an urgent task that we really need to work towards. And this means investing in new technologies like green methanol, derived from green hydrogen and biomass, for marine, for aviation, from rail and road, as well as electric trucks and heavy duty equipment, imports to accelerate the energy transition and drive down costs for the industry and for our customers as well, right? So last year, in 2022, we made significant progress toward our ambitions, 230 and 240 targets. By we invest in additional green methanol enabled vessels, we bring the total order of to 19 vessels. And to power these vessels, we signed memorandums of understanding with 9 green fuel producers around the world. Securing enough green, as already mentioned, right, green fuel at competitive prices is the crush of our path to net zero in 2040, as well as to our targets in midterm targets in 2030, right? So building the green ships is a matter of execution, and we know that we can get the capacity through normal fleet renewal, time charters, and potentially retrofits, right? But to deliver on the 2030 ambitions of having around 25 of our customer cargo transported on green fuels, we'll need approximately 5 million tons of green fuels. And this is a market which 1.5 years ago was existing. And this year, I think the overall production is 30,000 tons, right? So when we decide to start ordering green vessels, even if the green fuel market did not exist, it was to address, as you just mentioned, the chicken and the egg situation that we observed. And even if we still have some way before we have line of sight to the 5 million tons, we are encouraged by the fact that our demand signaled since to have worked, and we see some other shipping companies also start ordering ships that they can run on green methanol, right? This year, in 2023, we will have our first feeder vessel able to operate on green methanol on the water, and we will need 8 to 10,000 tons to fuel that first green feeder vessel. Hopefully, we will get there on time. If not, the vessel is equipped with a dual technology, so it can still run on the current bunker fuel. But we are positive that we will get there, and this feeder vessel could just use green methanol. Next year, we will start having some of our first 18 large vessels on the water, and for those we will need 1.5 million tons. Hopefully the MOU that we have signed with the different companies we will get us there, but more green vessels will come in the future, so more is needed. So we really need to make sure that we will have large scale green fuel projects across the globe able to cater for the needs of this shipping industry. This industry is by nature international industry. We need people to follow what we are doing as well, and the only way that you can get there is by having the right regulatory framework in place. We have no time to waste. Urgency is of matter here. We must do everything that we can to actually accelerate the green transition in shipping, in logistics in general. And as you mentioned, the next meeting, the MEPC meeting under the International Maritime Organization taking place in July, is crucial. It will be crucial to accelerate the efforts to reduce greenhouse emissions in shipping. It looks like there is a relatively majority of IMO member states in support of higher ambitions. Discussions on mid and long-term measures also need to progress, right? But if I can just make sort of a summary, right? The IMO strategy needs to be amended. That's the first point. It has to reflect the climate urgency thoroughly proven by science. As a minimum, the IMO must align with other UN bodies, for example, International Civil Aviation Organization, and adopt a net zero target for 2050. And such a target is not just a number, right? Must serve as a guiding principle to develop a solid regulatory framework that triggers the use of new technologies, and most important, that ends the use of fossil fuels in shipping. Because as mentioned before, like it or not, without regulation and mandatory deadlines, we will never get to zero. Then it's important that the IMO member states they agree on a basket of mid and long-term measures. And these measures should include a global greenhouse price, securing that fossil fuels are less attractive for everyone. It has to include a global fuel standard, securing that the production and the use of new green shipping fuels is taking place, and then a moratorium of the production of fossil fuel only vessels. All measures need to secure a just transition that leaves no one behind, and thus earmark a substantial amount of funds for what we are suggesting developing nations to jump into the energy transition and climate adaptation as well, right? And last but not least, it's very important that the IMO as well progress the revision of the IMO data collection system in order to include all relevant greenhouse gases and reflect actual energy efficiency of shipping and marine fuels on a well-to-wake basis so that it goes beyond what is burned on board the vessel. So we have to look at the whole life cycle analysis as well. We all are responsible and that we all need to collaborate and work together in order to reach the target and do it as soon as possible. Because if we don't act and we don't take action this decade, we will never get there. And we really need to be in full alignment with the Paris Agreement.